Cotton fields and cows for.
Good afternoon. We're here today at Insured Family going over Farm and Ranch row crop endorsements and gaps, episode 1. So with row crop, let's face it, that is the backbone of our country, has been for many decades before us, and I expect it to be for many decades after our generation. So with row crop, I can guarantee almost every policy we look at, including yours, if we look through your policy, you're going to have a gap somewhere within that coverage. That gap could cost you and your family and could be a catastrophic loss. So let's look at some of those gaps. And as we go into these gaps, what I'd like for you guys to do, if you'll interact with us, when we go over that, drop a comment on this video, yes to gap 1 or yes to gap 2, or no if your policy is good. So let's look at the first gap. What we typically see the most is underinsured equipment. You take a combine, for example. That combine's value today may be $350,000, $375,000. You may have it insured on the policy for $250,000. If that's the case, you have a gap. If you have a fire to that combine and a total loss to that combine in the field, you essentially are self-insuring from $250,000 to $325,000 or $350,000, the value of that combine. So, and if you're okay with that, that's certainly fine. If not, we need to look at those values, make sure those values are in place to replace that equipment. That is the first gap that we see typically with row crop. Row crops backbone really is going to look at structures, farm structures, shops, equipment shops, barns, to store the produce in, whether it be a tater shed, whether it be grain bins, hay, where we're storing hay. So, which hay's a field crop, but that still kind of falls into some of these endorsements. You have to have that equipment to make a row crop work. So the biggest gap we see again is going to be underinsured equipment, and we certainly can endorse those policies, look at those values, make that change to have you covered there to offset that gap. So the gap 2 that we see most of in row crop farm is custom farming. This I think a lot of people look over or they don't pay attention to. So if you go to your neighbor or your friend or your family and say you're plowing their field, or if you're helping them harvest or whatever, you've gotten into custom farming. That is not, while that exposure may be covered on your policy for the land that you own or lease, it's not covered on someone else's property. Most of the time will be excluded within those base farm and ranch policies. So that's another one we can easily endorse and pick up coverage for that custom farming, even if you do it one time. So the third biggest gap that we're going to go over today that most farmers hate to hear and are kind of skeptical of or scared of, so to speak, is chemical drift and pollution. Chemical drift and pollution, if the wind catches your spray in your field, goes on over to your neighboring fields, could damage their crops. Most of your policies base may have a little bit of coverage there, but they're going to exclude a lot. They're going to have a lot of limitations on it. Can pick that endorsement up. Will make you safe, give you extensions of coverage for a chemical drift onto somebody else's property, whether you're spraying your property or whether we're doing a custom job for someone else spraying. Just keep in mind, these are 3 gaps that we typically see. So that's one thing we want to look at to close those gaps. Again, we're going to come back on Thursday with more endorsements and gaps. Tune in on Thursday for row crop endorsement coverage gaps, episode 2. Also, we'll be live on Friday. So if you guys will post a comment on what you would like to hear on Friday, we'll try to address that in our live on Friday. But as always, thank you for being a part of our family, and may God bless.